hi everybody. My name is Erin Yunker. I am a pediatric sleep consultant and owner of the Happy Sleep Company. And I think we have around an hour today. And essentially, what I usually do with either my in-person seminars here in Ottawa, Canada, where I'm based, or my virtual seminars, which I do really often for Auggie and others, is spend around 15, 20 minutes just offering you some sleep education for infants, for toddlers, going through that and then allowing a lot of time, 40, 45 minutes for questions and answers, because those are usually the most popular part, is wanting to know what can I do for my individual child to help them get their sleep on track. So we'll leave lots of time for that. I'm just going to share my screen and make sure you can see that. Just one moment. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, so sorry guys, let's just go in. There we go. Everyone see that? Megan, you can see that?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So I own the Happy Sleep Company. We are a team of professional and infant and toddler sleep consultants. I have other consultants who work with me because we're very, very busy and we always want to get to everyone in a really timely manner when they've decided we need help with sleep. So when you contact us, if you ever need to contact us, you may talk to me, you may talk to one of my consultants. They're all amazing. They're trained by me. We all run under the same methodologies and philosophies around sleep. And so that's us. In terms of me, I am really passionate about children's healthy sleep. I have a little girl named Mila, and she is an amazing now 13-year-old child. She's an amazing sleeper now. She was not always an amazing sleeper. When she was an infant, we struggled with sleep, and it's actually what led me into my journey to become a sleep consultant and help other families overcome the really big challenge that can often be infant and toddler sleep. I have a master's degree in health communications and a certificate in infant and toddler sleep consulting. So those things really work together to help me work one-on-one with families to help them get the healthy sleep they need and help them get the information that they need. I recognize, and we recognize at the Happy Sleep Company, that you may be feeling overwhelmed. There is so much information online about baby and toddler sleep. And while it can be very helpful to have information at your fingertips, it can also be really tough to just sort of coordinate it all in your mind and reduce the overwhelm and sort it all out in a way that works for your individual family and your individual baby. And that is where we come in, working very one-on-one with families, face-to-face, one-on-one, day by day over a 2-week period, while we work with families on a specific plan for their child to get sleep on track. In terms of our approach, we accommodate different parenting styles. It's 2025. There really is no other way to do it, because I can just about guarantee that every person in all these little boxes with all of your names on them here on Zoom, every one of you has a different strategy and approach regarding your parenting style than the person in the little box next to you on Zoom. And your strategies, your values, your styles might be kind of similar, but a little bit different, or they might be vastly different. And it's really important to us that we understand what those values and styles are before we start working with a family, so that we can make sure that we're getting sleep on track in a way that makes sense, again, for your individual family. Our programs are really thorough and easy to follow and step by step. That's the one of the most important parts, because again, it reduces the overwhelm and gets you what you need, which is specific step-by-step help, kind of almost hand-holding, which we often need when it comes to baby sleep, to get you to the other side of the challenges you might be having. And most importantly, it's supportive and it's guided. It's us supporting and guiding you, and you supporting and guiding your little one through what can often be that very big challenge of sleep coaching. So first, I always like to talk about why sleep is so important, because I feel like as parents, and I gotta say, particularly as moms, when we become moms, it's like it came with a badge of honor that says, I can just do this now. I can just go on 3 or 4 hours of broken up sleep at night. And can we go on it? Sure. Can we thrive on it? No. We're not leading the healthiest, happiest lifestyle if we're only getting a few hours of broken up sleep at night. So it's like air, you got to have it. You got to have a lot of it. And both how much for your little ones, both how much and the kind of sleep your child is getting is really important. So uninterrupted sleep is really the most restful and healthy kind of sleep. And of course, as newborns, we're going to be seeing short naps, lots of wake ups at night for feeds. As we start to get out of that newborn stage, we're starting to hope to see the longer stretches of uninterrupted sleep at night, the longer, more restful naps. And if we're not seeing that, then that's where we come in and start to help families work on that. So we actually work with children at 14 weeks and beyond for formal sleep coaching. Newborns, we do have a newborn sleep guide that many parents find helpful to get them through that newborn stage and get them started off with some sleep shaping and some ideas around sleep education. But then if we're going to work with a family one-on-one for sleep coaching, it's after that 14-week mark when we fully exited the newborn stage. And naps are as important as nighttime sleep. Anybody who's ever told you, just don't worry about naps. If your baby doesn't nap, oh, big deal, they'll sleep better tonight anyway. That is not true. Sleep really does beget sleep, and the better rested your child is at night, generally, the better they are going to sleep. Sorry, the better rested your child is in the day, generally, the better they're going to sleep at night. The more overtired they get in the day, the more kind of agitated, overstimulated they are when they go to bed, likely the more restless they're going to be at night and the tougher a night they're going to have. So we really want to work on naps too and not discount naps. Some of the sleep related issues in the really tired families that we see, that we work with, that we talk to every day, we see sort of everywhere from grogginess to extreme fatigue. Like, yeah, I'm just kind of in a fog all the time since my baby was born. I'm tired, to I can barely drive to the grocery store on a daily basis without feeling like I might actually fall asleep at the wheel. We hear that from parents all the time, and we work with parents to get them to the other side of that because we need to be feeling safe, feeling happy, feeling rested to be able to thrive in our days. Difficulties concentrating both at work and at home. I work with a lot of 11-month-olds or children who are just on that cusp of maybe about to go to daycare. And it's often because mom is kind of like, oh, I just looked at the calendar and I'm realizing that I have to go back to work in a few weeks. And I don't know how I'm going to go on. I don't know how I'm going to function at work if I'm only getting a few hours of sleep at night. Or, my baby's going to be going to daycare, and currently the only way he'll go to sleep is nursing to sleep. And my daycare provider has assured me she will not be breastfeeding my child. So I don't really know how this is going to work in a few weeks when my baby goes to daycare. And we need now to get some independent sleep on track. And so that's something we often hear from families. Anxiety, frustration, depression, irritability, relationship challenges are all things that we see when someone in the family isn't getting enough rest. Sometimes that is mom saying, I am just, snapping at my older child and my partner all the time because I'm just so tired because I'm up all night with a baby. Sometimes it is parents saying we are really frustrated and impatient with our preschooler right now because he keeps getting out of his big kid bed multiple times every night and none of us are getting enough sleep. And we work with older children too for that reason, to be able to get older kids in big kid beds, get them the sleep they need as well. So let's talk about how much sleep your children need. Really, newborns need lots and lots and lots. Newborns are needing 15 to 18 hours in a 24-hour period. So that's between their naps and their nights. Newborns take tons of naps, and we'll talk about how many naps this all translates into shortly, but they need a lot of sleep. 4 to 12 months, we're usually seeing more like 14 to 15 hours in a day, again, between the day and the night combined. And then 12 months and older, around 13 to 14 hours. A lot of parents don't recognize that children actually need 10 to 12 hours of sleep until the age of 10. So sometimes we kind of get into the school ages and we start to think, well, I have evening activities for my child. They're older now. It's fine if they don't go to bed until 9, 10 p.m. If your child is only 6, 7, 8 years old, that's a pretty late bedtime. And we're looking at a lot of overtiredness and sleep debt. So I really encourage families when they're thinking about their activity schedules and their evenings to work backwards from an age appropriate bedtime and think about what you can fit in, but still fit in a proper bedtime. And also think about trying to do activities on weekends during the day when it's not nap time or it's well in advance of your child's bedtime, and do those swim lessons or gymnastics classes on the weekends when your child is still quite young and needs quite an early bedtime. In terms of how many naps this all translates into. So usually newborns are having lots of naps. They might need 4, 5, even 6 naps in a day. One of the reasons for this is because their wake windows are really short. Now, most of you have probably already done a lot of research on sleep and you already know what a wake window is. But in case you don't, or if you need my definition of it, a wake window is the amount of time your child can be awake before they probably need to be sleeping again, the amount of time they can be awake before they're going to start to get overtired. So for newborns, that wake window is really only around 45 minutes to an hour. So we really then see that translate into a lot of naps in the day. Short wake windows, lots of naps. Usually by 4 to 6 months old, we're on more like 3 naps a day. And I will say 3 naps happens closer to 4.5, 5 months. If your 4-month-old is still having 4 naps, that's pretty normal. 4.5 to 5 months, we start to see more of a 3 nap day. And how does that happen? Well, normally our wake windows increase as our baby gets older. We start to recognize, oh, you're 4.5 months now, and you don't seem tired at the wake windows I was giving you a few weeks ago. You seem still full of energy at the end of your wake window. I think it's time to increase your wake window. And as you increase your child's wake windows all throughout the day, the last nap of the day just starts to disappear. So if you had a 4-month-old on one set of wake windows and they were having 4 naps a day, but close to 5 months, you increase all of their wake windows during the day. Well, now they may not have time for that 4th nap anymore. And that's how you've now gotten on a 3 nap day. So that's really how we drop a nap, is by increasing the wake windows throughout the day as your baby shows signs that they can handle that. And I can provide some more information for anyone who needs it. And we have a lot of information on our website about when wake windows increase. 7 to 8 months is usually when we see 2 naps a day begin. Usually it's 7.5+ months that most children do best with the transition from 3 naps to 2 naps. And again, that's because around 8 months, they start to be able to handle more wake window, more awake time in the day again. And then they get on that 2 nap day because there's not time in the day for that 3rd nap anymore. And then 16 months to 3 to 4 years, we get down to 1 nap a day. So usually children transition best to 1 nap a day at around 16 to 18 months. A lot of children have to transition to 1 nap a day earlier than that, around 12 months, because they go to a day, or maybe even earlier, because they go to a daycare that will only accommodate 1 nap per day. I do usually find that daycares who have children who are under a year of age will accommodate a multi-nap schedule, but a lot of daycares, once a child hits kind of age 1, they want them to be on a 1 nap schedule. I love it when a daycare can help a family continue with 2 naps longer than that if their child needs that, which many children do. But a lot of daycares just find it's easier for their schedule if all the 1+ year olds are on 1 nap per day. If your child is only 12, 13, 14 months and on 1 nap per day, I recommend quite an early bedtime, like in bed, lights out, 6 p.m. And I know that might seem very early for some families, and it's not even feasible for some families, but as close to 6 p.m. as we can get for a 1-year-old who's on 1 nap a day is usually going to be quite helpful, because we don't want them getting overtired, because that can cause a lot of night wakes. Usually when we're 16, 18 months plus, then we can handle a 1 nap day and more like a 7 o'clock bedtime. And then normally we will hang on to our 1 nap per day until a child is around 3 to 4 years of age, and then they'll drop their nap altogether. Their bedtime will get a bit later as they get a little bit older and they're still napping. And then once they drop their nap altogether, close to sort of kindergarten age, then you'll go back to an early bedtime for a while until they get a little bit adjusted to not napping. So common sleep hurdles, what we hear most from tired parents. Here's a common one. My baby will only sleep well if they're in bed with a parent or sleeping on a parent. So this is a good time to probably point something important out. It's really important to remember that every word that comes out of my mouth comes from a biased perspective. And that is to say, I'm a sleep consultant. Parents don't come to me when sleep is going well. Parents come to me when they're struggling with sleep, and when they really aren't comfortable or happy with their current sleep situation, and they really, really want to make changes to their current sleep situation. So that is to say that if a parent comes to me and says, my baby will only sleep well if in bed with a parent or sleeping on a parent, they want to change that. I recognize that there are parents who might make this statement and be happy with this statement, and it works for their individual family. But when I say that this is a hurdle, it's a hurdle for the parents who are coming to us. Maybe they have another child who needs attention at night, and it doesn't work for them to have their baby sleeping on them well into the evening. Maybe they have another child who needs attention during the day, or mom or dad just needs to get things done in the day, or their back is breaking from rocking their baby to sleep for every nap, and this scenario isn't working for them, this solely contact nap or sleeping on them scenario, and this is something that they want to make a change to. So that's a common hurdle that we hear from parents. My baby doesn't like his crib. My baby hates his crib. I hear that one a lot. I always kind of joke that the most beautiful thing about babies is that they don't know how to hate. They don't. So they can't hate their cribs. It's not possible. They might not be very familiar with their crib as a space to go to sleep in, and then they may protest going in there. And then we talk about why that might be and how we overcome that. My baby wakes up multiple times at night at an age where I kind of thought that wasn't going to be happening anymore. So what's going on there? And my baby only ever naps for 30 to 45 minutes at a time. That is a big one that we hear. That's a very common thing we hear from parents, is about the cat naps. Cat naps are going to happen for a multitude of reasons, but there is one big one, and it explains a lot of things around what most people are struggling with regards to baby sleep, and it is sleep props. What we refer to as sleep props, or if you follow us on Instagram, you will hear me use the term sleep crutches a lot. What we mean when we say sleep props or sleep crutches is anything your baby relies on in order to get to sleep that inevitably they are then going to need in order to get back to sleep again. So that might be rocking to sleep, feeding to sleep, replacing a pacifier to go to sleep, sleeping in a parent's bed or on a parent. Again, these may be things that work really well for some families that other families are saying this is not working for us. And so the 45-minute nap is a very good example of what happens when a baby is reliant on sleep props. So that's because 45 minutes isn't a coincidence. It's one sleep cycle for your baby. So let's say that my sleep prop is bouncing on a yoga ball with my baby in my arms using a pacifier. This is a common one that we hear. We hear a lot of parents say, I am going to burn that ball when I'm done working with you because I am so tired of bouncing on this ball. So let's say that's our sleep crutch and that's our sleep prop, and we've bounced baby to sleep in our arms on the yoga ball with the pacifier, and then we transfer this very, very sleepy or already sleeping baby into the crib and we tiptoe away. And 30 to 45 minutes later, every single time, baby wakes up. What's happened is baby's gone through that one sleep cycle, 45 minutes or close to. And near the end of that sleep cycle, around the 30 to 45-minute mark, baby is in a lighter stage of sleep, trying to transition into their next stage of sleep. And they're rustling and they're stirring and their eyelids are fluttering a little bit. A baby who had gone into the crib fully awake with no sleep crutches and gone to sleep independently is still likely to rustle and stir and maybe even open their eyes at that 45-minute mark, but they are likely to then just use their independent sleep skills to go back to sleep again and have a 2-hour nap. A baby who'd gone into the crib with sleep crutches is going to wake up fully at that end of that sleep cycle and say, whoa, 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 bam. What's going on here? How did I get here? This isn't where I went to sleep. This isn't how I went to sleep. When I went to sleep, I was in somebody's arms. I had a breast or a bottle in my mouth. I had a pacifier in my mouth. Now I'm just in this crib. I don't even know how I got here. And I definitely didn't go to sleep here. So I definitely don't know how to go back to sleep here. So the goal with sleep coaching is to remove the crutches, the props, and teach your little one how to go into the crib awake and fall asleep using just their own sleep skills. And this is an important time to talk about a question that we very often get and probably is burning in your minds and something we'll talk about more in the Q&A. But this doesn't mean just putting your baby in the crib fully awake without any sleep props for the first time ever, walking away and giving your baby no reassurance. This does not need to be cry it out or extinction. Cry it out, extinction is a method of sleep coaching that quite literally means put baby in crib, awake, walk away, do not return. That is extinction. That is not our approach at the Happy Sleep Company, but it's an approach that I'm sure many of you have Googled, and that is what it means. To us at the Happy Sleep Company and to many sleep consultants, one of the most important parts of your baby learning independent sleep skills is you reassuring them and supporting them during that process. Just like you would reassure and support your baby during any other new process that they're going through in their lives that they're not yet comfortable with or familiar with. So we want your baby to hear your voice and feel your touch and be picked up for a hug if they need a hug. But we also need to avoid the sleep crutches if we're going to make changes and get your baby to the other side of this, having learned something different. So I am always very open and transparent in saying there are going to be peers involved in sleep coaching. But I think it's equally important for parents to understand that if we prepare for those inevitable tears, because it is a big change, but then we manage those tears because we prepared for them, we manage those tears in a way that you're not just leaving your baby alone for huge extended periods of time without support, then you're going to come out the other side of this with a baby who is confident and comfortable and familiar with how to go to sleep on their own. So let's talk about just kind of some top tips for getting healthy sleep started from scratch. For those of you who are really just kind of wondering what are the first places I can start, and then we'll take some time for some Q&A. First place I always look is what I call the easy stuff. And I call it easy because it's very much in your control as a parent. And that is what your baby's sleep environment looks like. Is it even conducive to sleeping? Avoiding distractions, twinkly mobiles, toy fishy aquariums attached to the crib, bright night lights, or even like a bright power light on the video monitor that's hanging above your baby's crib. I would avoid stuff like this. Obviously, video monitor is fine, but if you have some light that's kind of avoidable on it, like a bright, useless power light, I would cover that up. Dark is really best for baby sleep. So avoiding all those bright distractions and also using blackout blinds covered yet by blackout curtains. Not just regular blinds, not just regular twisty blinds, blackout blinds. Not just regular curtains, blackout curtains. They don't have to be black. They don't have to be ugly. They don't have to be brown or some kind of dark color if that's not the aesthetic of your room. You can get beautiful blackout curtains that are white, but they have a blackout panel sewn in the back. So they really get rid of that light that comes in and distracts your baby from sleeping. A lot of parents will raise to me, well, won't my baby get day-night confusion? Babies get day-night confusion just from being allowed to sleep too long in the day. So if you have a newborn and you're worried about that, I would put them in their nice, dark, quiet sleep environment, but I would not let them nap more than a couple of hours in the day. And then I would get them up and have an hour of awake time in the natural light with you talking to them and playing with them, and then down for their next nap. That's how we avoid day-night confusion, not by trying to get your child to learn to sleep with the sun shining in their room. It's also a lot easier to sleep when it's quiet. So I love a sound machine for babies and toddlers and preschoolers. And honestly, I still use the sound machine because I live on a busy street and it helps my partner and I sleep restfully. So it avoids hearing the garbage truck lumbering down the street at 5 o'clock in the morning. Or if you have a child who's going to bed at 7:30 at night, maybe it's, that time in the middle of the summer and there's a lot of older kids out yelling and playing on the street and you're trying to get your baby to go to sleep. A sound machine can be a really good idea. Just have it on a white noise setting or brown noise, pink noise, whatever you prefer. Have it 5 or 10 feet away from your baby's head so it's not right up next to their ear. And just have it like under 50 to 60 decibels. And then creating really good sleep cues. One of those is a little book at bedtime and a sleep bag or a sleep sack. I love a sleep sack. If you're out of the swaddle stage, maybe you never did the swaddle stage, you went right to a sleep sack, but it's safer than blankets and it's a very good cue for your child when it goes on for every nap and every nighttime sleep that this means sleep time is arriving soon because I have this sleep bag thing on. Do not fear an early bedtime. So this is more about really focusing on proper wake windows and also not having a static bedtime every single night for an infant who's on multiple naps. I am not a fan of rigid by the clock schedules. I am a fan of wake windows and focusing your schedule around wake windows. So let me give you an example. If I'm talking to the parent of a 5-month-old and they tell me that their 5-month-old goes to bed at precisely 7 p.m. every night, I'm kind of wondering about that. And I'll ask them, well, does your baby wake up right at 5 p.m. every single night from his final nap? And they'll say, well, no, sometimes he wakes up at 5. I'm like, okay, well, if he wakes up at 5, 2-ish hour wake window for a 5-month-old, great. 7 o'clock is a good bedtime. But what if he wakes up from a nap at 4:30? Well, we still do a 7 o'clock bedtime because that's his bedtime. But if a 5-month-old wakes up from his last nap at 4:30, 7 o'clock is kind of late. He's probably overtired. I would do a little earlier than that night. And what if there are days when your baby has a really longer nap day and he doesn't wake up from his last nap until 5:30? We still do 7 o'clock because that is our bedtime. Well, he's probably not tired enough at 7 o'clock for his bedtime. If he didn't wake up from his last nap until 5:30, I would allow bedtime to be 7:30 that night. So it's really about allowing a little bit of flexibility in your schedule and not assuming that bedtime has to be the exact same time every night. Routines are key. You will have heard this and read this and seen this before, but it is worth repeating because babies and toddlers love routines. They like predictability. They do not like surprises in their scheduling. So you really want to help your baby understand when sleep time is coming up. We can do that with, doing their bedtime feed if they're still at an age where you're doing a bedtime feed, which is certainly under the age of 1 and often beyond. And then we can do our bath, our pajamas, and our sleep bag, brush our teeth, read a couple of books, and go to bed for the night. And that can be a great routine to help your baby understand that the big long sleep in the crib is coming up soon. And then the final part is to remember that thing we talked about before. And this is just if you're struggling with short naps, if you're struggling with lots of night wakes, we want to consider whether this is because baby is using those sleep crutches to go to sleep and then waking up for those sleep crutches in the night because they're not sure how to connect sleep cycles on their own. And so this is where the final part of our routine is reading those books and putting our baby in the crib awake. And again, I recognize that it's not that simple, and that's actually the hardest part if your baby's never done this before, but there are definitely methods you can take where you can offer your baby that support and reassurance to get them to the other side of that and get them good at and comfortable with going into their crib awake. So that's what we work on with families at the Happy Sleep Company. We always recommend that a family has an initial free 20-minute phone call with us if they're considering working with us or if they just need some extra advice. We sit down on a free 20-minute chat with families. We walk through what a current average day and night looks like for your baby to see what we can offer off the top in terms of advice and what might need to change. We can talk about our support. When we work with a family, we get some initial paperwork from them. We sit down and then have an hour-long Zoom call face-to-face with you and your consultant so we can walk through a very specific plan for what we're going to do and how we're going to implement these changes to get your baby sleeping through the night, taking their nice long restful naps in the day. Then we provide you with a plan written out step by step, and then we're with you every day for 2 weeks. Every day, my clients send me a sleep log. Every day I review their log. I give them feedback. I answer any questions they have. And then we do that every day for a couple of weeks to make sure they feel supported. They have that one-on-one support. They have answers to their questions every day. They get feedback every day. We make adjustments as we need to, and they know they're getting support for their individual child that's making sense for what's happening specifically in their individual days as they make this transition. So that's kind of everything off the top for me. I'll stop sharing my screen and I will open it up to questions. And perhaps, unless Megan has another idea for how you've done this in the past with other presenters, maybe we'll just use the hand up function and I can answer questions that way. Or if you're comfortable going off video and off microphone and you want to ask your question verbally or live, that's fine. If you want to put up your hand and do that, that's fine. And also I can try to get them from the chat as well. Does that sound good? Awesome. Okay, so hands up or microphones off and screens off or put it in the chat if you have a question. Feel free. Usually questions are the most popular part because everybody's struggling with something when it comes to sleep if you're on this call. Nobody wants to go first. I do seminars in Ottawa all the time and in-person seminars, and they're usually for children who are kind of 0 to 12 months. And there's always like 45 minutes of questions, and I'm still answering questions as I walk out the door. But one time, the organizer of this mommy group and I decided to do like a newborn session for parents who were expecting and hadn't had their babies yet. And when I got to the question and answer part, it was like crickets. And she and I were kind of looking at each other like, what's going on? Like, there's always a million questions. And then we were like, oh, none of them have had their babies yet. So they don't know. They don't know the questions to ask. And when we do the 0 to 12 months and they've all had their babies, there's a lot of questions once you're actually in the thick of it. Yeah, anybody, any questions?
There's one in the chat.
There's one in the chat. Here we go. Okay. What is the wake window for a 4-month-old? How do you adjust bedtime if the nap time varies from day to day? Okay, great question. So again, I'll put a link in a moment in the chat too to our website, or you can go to the happysleepcompany.com and go to our blog, because we do have a number of documents there. And we have a blog post that goes really step by step through what wake windows are for various ages. But I would say for a fresh 4-month-old, we're doing like an hour and a half wake window in the morning before the first nap, and then probably like an hour 45 leading up to the other naps and bedtime. So I'm a big fan of pretty quick, consistent wake windows throughout the day. Other than the first wake window, I usually make a little bit shorter than all the other ones. So for a 4-month-old, hour and a half in the morning, because usually babies are most tired and ready for their first sleep of the day, and they get overtired really quickly in the morning. So we want to shorten that one a little. So hour and a half. And then the rest of the day's wake windows leading up to their other naps and to their bedtime is an hour and 45 minutes. And then how do you adjust bedtime if the nap time varies from day to day? So that's kind of what we were talking about before. Like if I have a 4-month-old and their wake window is an hour 45, well, if today their last nap ends at 5, then I'd put them to bed at 6:45, because that's their hour 45 wake window. If tomorrow their last nap ends at 5:30, then I would put them to bed at 7:15 that day, because that's their hour 45 wake window. So for a 4-month-old, I would usually try to keep bedtime somewhere between like 6:15 and 8:30, depending on when their last nap ended. As they get a little older, 4.5+ months, I'm usually doing bedtime somewhere between 6 and 8, depending on when the last nap ended. I hope that helps, Michelle. And then Elena, you said, do you serve clients with older kids? Yes, absolutely, we do. All the way up to well into that. We're working with a 7-year-old right now. Your son is 4 and you're expecting your second in early November. He's been waking a few times at night, will only go back to sleep if you're in his bed. So I will tell you that the most common sleep props or crutches that I see for infants are rocking to sleep, feeding to sleep, pacifier. The most common sleep crutches I see for 4-year-olds are a parent needing to lie in their bed until they fall asleep. And you know what? You see that meme go around every few months on Facebook and Instagram that talks about like, why wouldn't, it's an article, I think, and it says, why wouldn't I lay with my child to fall asleep? And it's that idea of there's only so many years where they're going to want that and that kind of thing. I think that's a little too idyllic, and it's not realistic for every family. And I think you're probably experiencing that, where it would be just lovely and sound so idyllic if every child would just allow their parent to lie with them for 5 minutes at bedtime and then go to sleep. And then the parent could have some much needed adult time, maybe spend time with their partner in the evening, and then sleep through the night. But what's happening for 4-year-olds whose parents come to us is that that's not what it looks like. You need to lay with your child for an hour or more at bedtime every night. And then by the time they finally go to sleep, you're exhausted and don't have any time to yourself, which you need as a human, and as a parent. Then, because they couldn't go to sleep independently at bedtime, they're up multiple times in the night, anytime they're in a light stage of sleep, looking for that sleep crutch for you to lie with them again. So we absolutely work with older children. It's a whole other ball of wax and a whole other sort of strategy when we're working with children who can walk and talk and get out of their bed, and talking about sort of age appropriate rewards and motivations and conversations and negotiations and dialogue. But absolutely, we work with older children too. And we have all that information on our website. And Megan, I don't know if you're able to, but if you're able to just go to the happysleepcompany.com, our website, and maybe just throw it into the chat if you have a moment, that would be super helpful. Yeah, thank you. Michaela said, I have a 4-week-old and we're doing a lot of contact naps just for my enjoyment as well, because that is so snuggly and enjoyable. Why wouldn't you? He's sleeping reasonably well at night, usually a 4 to 6 hour stretch or two. My question is, when am I at risk of developing a bad habit? So this is a tough one. It's a tough one. So there's also this thing where we hear you can't develop bad habits with newborns, or you can't develop habits in newborns. And then there's also this idea you can't spoil a newborn. And I think those are two different things. Can you spoil a newborn with too many cuddles? Absolutely not. You just cuddle, cuddle, cuddle your baby. Can you create habits with a newborn? Of course you can. And it's really just by dictionary definition, right? Like if you look up the definition of a habit, it's doing the same thing over and over until it's something that's kind of expected and the way that we do something as a norm. And if we do the same thing over and over with a newborn, for example, have them sleep on us, we are inevitably going to create a habit. Is it a bad habit? No, but is it something that we might have to change later on if it no longer works for us? I would say yes. So if we're already sort of a month in with baby and we've almost only done contact naps, this may just kind of be the way that your baby naps now until you feel comfortable. If at any point you feel comfortable and you want to take steps to have them sleep in a bassinet or a crib, it may be some sleep coaching later on that helps them learn more independent sleep skills if they haven't developed those in the newborn stage. And most babies don't develop independent sleep habits in the newborn stage. It's just realistic. As parents, we want to cuddle and snuggle our babies all day long. We also, are dealing with our own stuff in terms of, I just became a parent, I am learning to breastfeed, or I am learning how to bottle feed, and I am dealing with a baby who has colic or reflux or just is fussy a lot, the witching hour, all these things. And a lot of times that means if you'll just sleep on me, and that's going to make it easier for me right now, and that's one variable I can take out of this, I'm just going to do it. And so that's what we do. But then we kind of get out of the newborn stage into that 3.5, 4+ month mark and realize, oh gosh, okay, now I'm not sure if this is sustainable for me and for you. And we both need to be getting more sleep. So I might have to make a change. So I would say you do what works best for you and your baby right now and always. But if at some point that becomes something that you feel like you need to change, then you make that change. I'm a very big proponent of you do what works for you and your individual family in that moment. And you make changes if and when you feel they're necessary. You don't just make changes because some scary article online told you that you should, and so doing what works best for you and your family until or unless it doesn't is kind of the key there. And again, sleep coaching, I wouldn't recommend more formal sleep coaching until the 14+ week mark, because we just see families have a lot more success with it when their baby is out of that very rapidly changing developmental era of the newborn stage. How do you recommend weaning from sleep props like the pacifier, rocking? Sorry, this is the next question. Rocking, contact napping. How long would you expect it to take to transition to sleeping independently without them? My son is 5 months. So this is from Andrea. This is sleep coaching. How do you recommend weaning from sleep props like a pacifier, rocking, contact napping? The answer to this is sleep coaching. So then now let's talk about what sleep coaching means, at least to me and to us at the Happy Sleep Company. Sleep coaching means removing the crutches and teaching your child how to go into the crib awake and fall asleep without those crutches they had before. There are various ways you can go about this. And so I'm going to talk about a few of them. And I'll explain it the way I always explain in my seminars. Because sleep coaching, yes, there are quote unquote a lot of different methodologies, but in actual fact, there are not. Logistically speaking, there's kind of 4 ways that you can get your baby to go to sleep. On this end of that spectrum, you have pacifier, rocking to sleep, contact napping, feeding to sleep, all the stuff that parents come to us to change when they're ready to make that change or they want to make that change. But these are ways that you are probably doing right now based on this question to get your baby to go to sleep. On the other end of the spectrum, you have cry it out or extinction, which means I'm not doing these things anymore and I'm going to put baby in the crib fully awake. I'm going to walk away and I'm not going back. And that is cry it out or extinction. Again, not our strategy at the Happy Sleep Company, but that is a method of sleep coaching that some parents choose or that you can read about online. Somewhere in the middle, if you're not wanting to do this stuff anymore, the pacifier, the rocking, the contact napping, and you're wanting to make a change to that, but you're also not feeling comfortable with cry it out or extinction, somewhere in the middle, all you have left, if you think about it kind of logistically, if you're not doing this anymore and you don't want to do that, you're either going to be taking some kind of sit in the room approach or some kind of leaving and checking approach. That is where I would say most sleep consultants land, if I could call it that, because I know a lot of sleep consultants. I've been doing this for over 10 years. And I've worked with almost 5,000 families at this point between me and my consultants. So I would say that most sleep consultants are using either some kind of sit in the room approach or some kind of leaving and checking approach. With a sit in the room approach, for example, we would be talking to a family about a parent being in the room the whole time while baby's first falling asleep, being right beside them when they're first learning to fall asleep independently. A sit in the room approach is one that I would generally take with a family if this baby, for example, is 5 months old and has only ever contact napped and slept in their parents' bed at night. If that's the case, and tonight, for the first time with me, we're putting this baby in the crib awake, crib period. They've never even been in their crib before, and they've certainly never been in there awake. That's a massive change for this baby. So I am likely to recommend a sit in the room approach where a parent sits right by baby the whole time. Then we have to get into the nuances of that. What does that look like? Because we want to be there for them, but we're not offering sleep crutches anymore, like picking them up and rocking them to sleep. But that doesn't mean you can't pick your baby up for a hug. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to hear your voice and feel your touch and have that intermittent reassurance and those moments of co-regulation and know that you are there for them. So that would be more of a sit in the room approach where a parent would be there the whole time. And we would gradually work away from that over our time working together as baby gets more comfy falling asleep without those sleep props they used to use. A leaving and checking approach you may be thinking like Ferber, for example. Ferber is an example of a leaving and checking approach. It's not my preferred or ever leaving and checking approach per se. Not that there's a lot of families who've had success with that approach. Ferber is actually referred to as graduated extinction, and it means that you increase the amount of time during which you leave the room and check back on your baby. And if you're doing Ferber in its sort of traditional sense, the reason that it's called graduated extinction is because if you get to a certain point of time having left and checked back and your baby's still not sleeping, then you practice extinction, which is stopping going altogether. That's why I don't use Ferber, because even when I'm using a leaving and checking approach with a family, one, I like them to go in at a more consistent amount of time, not increasing the amount of time every time. And I also don't ever have a point where I say, well, just stop checking on your baby, just do extinction. We don't get there, because that's not what families come to us for. They want an approach where they're going to be able to consistently go and be there for their baby. But that would be another example of a sleep coaching methodology. An answer to Andrea's question about starting to wean from sleep props and getting rid of those props is sort of replacing them with reassurance and support, but not reintroducing the props once you've gotten rid of them, so baby's not confused. I mentioned co-regulation. I'd also like to take the opportunity to mention that we at the Happy Sleep Company almost 2 years ago now partnered with a registered social worker, because I found that so many parents were needing an extra element to sleep coaching that was about their mental health, about their attachment with their baby, about how to properly co-regulate, about how to do some cognitive restructuring during the process of sleep coaching. So our programs are actually supervised by a registered social worker so that we have that mental health lens. There are various documents and resources that she has created that are given to all of our clients when we work with them, so that that mental health lens, that attachment lens is put on our programs. Dom asks, I have a 3-month-old. Should I be waking him at a consistent time every morning, or just wait until he wakes naturally? It's a really good question. A lot of parents have this designated wake up time. I'm not a big fan. Babies aren't robots. If we as parents didn't have alarm clocks or little human alarm clocks that woke us up every morning, we wouldn't wake at exactly the same time every day. So I would say for a 3-month-old, if it's past 6 a.m. and they're awake, I would stop treating it like a night wake, however you treat night wakes, Dom. And I would start treating it like morning time if it's any time past 6. And for a 3-month-old, I would say if they're not awake by around 8, I would wake them up, just so we have enough time in the day for all of their proper feedings and naps and a proper age-appropriate schedule. There are different times of the day where I would say this is the latest I would wake up a baby of X age, just so they can have a proper nap schedule in the day. We also actually, on our website, you'll find sleep guides. So our one-on-one 2-week sleep programs are where we work very closely face-to-face, emails every day with a specific family that we're working with. And those are parents who are really feeling like, I need help with individualized sleep coaching and getting rid of sleep crutches and helping my baby sleep independently. A lot of parents will come to us and say, I already did sleep coaching on my own. I don't need sleep coaching, or I don't want to do sleep coaching. I want to keep rocking my baby to sleep. But I always have a ton of questions about scheduling. When my baby is X age, what time of the morning should they be awake by? When my baby is this age, how many naps should they be having? When my baby is this age, when should their last nap end? And what's the latest bedtime for them? And we got so many of those questions that a few years ago, I actually drew up a number of different sleep guides. One is for 4 to 10 months. One is for 11 to 18 months. And one is a toddler preschooler sleep guide. And those are really not about sleep coaching at all. They are about scheduling nuances to just kind of get your head wrapped around it, all the different ages, all those nuances that so commonly parents have questions about. So you can find the sleep guides on our website as well. How about room sharing? Brothers will be sharing a room. Okay, I thought this was going to be about parents sharing a room with a child, and I can talk about that too. But room sharing, brothers will be sharing rooms. Older is 6 years old, baby is 4 months. Any tips on how to navigate this? We still have to lay with the 6-year-old until he falls asleep. So first, I just want to digress a little bit, because I thought this was going to be about parents sharing a room with a baby. So just quickly, I will say it is absolutely possible and fine to do sleep coaching while you are still room sharing with your baby as a parent. We just set up the room in a sleep conducive way, and we have the crib or the bassinet, not butted up right next to the bed, but around. And we work with lots of families who room share with their baby and sleep coach. It does kind of segue into this next part that Michelle asked about. So brothers sharing a room. Anytime parents ask me, what do you think about siblings sharing a room? My answer is, make sure they're both really good sleepers first. And that is how it's going to go best. So If you're struggling with your 6-year-old sleep because you still have to lay with him until he falls asleep, or you're not struggling, if you're struggling with it and you have to lay with him and it takes a really long time, plus he wakes up at night and comes to your room, so you lay with him again, that might be something you want to consider working on and getting him sleeping easily through the night and going to bed more quickly and peacefully before you introduce the baby into his room, because that's probably going to be disruptive for the baby if you're always in there helping your 6-year-old get to sleep. So you might consider working on that first so that the transition to the room sharing is easier. Or maybe it's that you're not struggling with your 6-year-old. You just lay with him for a few minutes until he falls asleep. That's probably going to be fine. Your baby's probably not even going to notice if you have a nice dark room. But then the other part of it would be, is your baby a good sleeper? Can your baby go down relatively independently? Can your baby sleep through the night yet? I would generally suggest that parents wait for room sharing with siblings until both children are great sleepers, meaning both children can go to sleep independently and both children consistently sleep through the night. Or if they wake up a little bit in the night, they can easily get themselves back to sleep, which is what sleep coaching generally accomplishes. So I would wait until then. I would probably room share with your 4-month-old until the point that you feel confident that they are an independent sleeper and sleep well through the night, and that your 6-year-old is the same, can go to sleep quite independently, or you only have to lay with them for a couple minutes and then they go to sleep on their own and they sleep through the night. Once those two things are true, you're going to have a lot more success and probably a lot less frustration with them sharing a room because they're both good sleepers. Good morning. I co-sleep with my baby. My baby twists and turns and flips and is all over my bed. When I've tried to place him in his crib, he's constantly hitting his head on the headboard of the crib. It's discouraged me from proceeding. What advice do you have to ensure I can keep him unharmed? Do I wait until he's more settled in his sleep? I will say that I actually worked in Health Canada for over 10 years before I became a sleep consultant, and I worked a lot in infant safety and product safety. So that's kind of my background before this. And Health Canada is, for those of you in the States, which I think most of you are in the States actually, Health Canada is kind of like the US federal health regulator equivalent in Canada. And I will tell you this, a crib is the safest place for your baby to sleep. It's science, it's research. A crib is the safest place for your baby to sleep. And the reason I say that is because I'm not placing any blame, shame, or judgment on co-sleeping. I'm just saying it is proven that being in a crib is the safest place. So even if your child was to bump his head on the headboard, it would still be a safer place to sleep and a safer sleep situation than any other sleep situation you can put your baby in. So that's why I would say I wouldn't stress and worry about it. I know it's not fun to see your baby bump their head on the headboard or get their arm in the slat on the crib and feel and look uncomfortable. But we go and we adjust. We maybe with your baby seems like they're probably still quite young, and so we maybe go and we see that they've kind of bumped their head on the headboard, so we reassure them and then we adjust them into the middle of the crib. Or we can see on the monitor that baby's arm is in the little slat, and so we go and we adjust them and we give them a hug and reassure and we adjust them away from that. But we don't need to stress that baby is going to be harmed by sleeping in a nice, clean, empty crib with just a mattress and a fitted sheet, because that is the safest place for your baby to sleep. And that would be my advice about that is, and I know it's hard to just say, don't stress, they'll be fine. But if that's your biggest concern about the crib is the safety factor of it, it is the safest place for them to sleep. Mariana. Hello, my baby's 4 months old and we do exclusive breastfeeding and we've been struggling with her nighttime sleep. She has very consistent 4 naps daily, range from 45 minutes to an hour. Usually a bedtime routine, the last thing we do is feeding. So our routine is bath, PJs, feeding, crib. Sometimes we do book, but she gets really anxious at PJ time, so we skip the book. If we do feeding first, is it going to be enough for her to have a long stretch of sleep? She also has a lot of false starts. If you think about your bedtime routine, it's not that long. And a lot of parents will ask me this. Well, what if I move the feed to earlier in the bedtime routine, then she has to have a longer stretch at night. Realistically, that's probably only going to put your feed like 20 minutes earlier than it currently is, max. Because a bath and pajamas and one little book really only take usually about 20, maximum 30 minutes. So we're really not moving the feed that much earlier in the routine by doing that and not asking your baby to do that much bigger of a stretch at night. Like we're asking for a difference of 20 minutes in most situations. If you really don't feel comfortable doing it before the bath, then I would suggest at minimum, do the feed right after the bath. So it's still not the very last thing that's happening before your baby goes in the crib. So we maybe do a bath and then the feed, keeping your baby awake so we don't have that feed sleep association that they might be having false starts looking for. Bath, feed, pajamas, sleep sack, 2 little books, into the crib awake. So that way your feed is closer to when your baby goes into the crib, which maybe eases your mind a little bit about them having the longer stretch at night, but it's not so close to when they go into the crib that they're really associating it with how to fall asleep. So that's that. And then the false starts are really kind of same answer as that conversation we had during my presentation about the 45-minute nap, meaning if your baby goes into the crib really sleepy or drowsy from their feed or from being in your arms, and then they fall asleep, somewhat independently, but also you did a lot of the work before you put them in there, they're very likely to wake up and have a false start 30 to 45 minutes into their nighttime sleep because they're trying to get into a deeper sleep, but they wake up realizing I'm not on the breast anymore. I'm not on the bottle anymore. My pacifier fell out. When I went to sleep, I was in your arms. Now I'm in this crib. What's going on? So that's where, again, working on going into the crib fully awake and falling asleep using fully their own independent sleep skills can help get rid of those false starts, because then when they rustle and stir a little bit at the 30 to 45-minute mark into their nighttime sleep, they have the skills to just get themselves back to sleep and keep on sleeping and have a full night. Megan, thank you so much. I'm scrolling through the chat and I see that you put our website. So I'll go to the next question, but on our website, you're going to find a lot of stuff. You're going to find, if you did want to have a free 20-minute phone consultation with any of us, you can just go on the website and click on that option and fill out a super quick little form, and one of us will be in touch within the day to schedule a free 20-minute phone chat. You're going to find our blog with lots of posts on everything from nap transitions to wake windows to room sharing to teething to illness to all those things. You'll find the sleep guides, the age by age sleep guides that I talked about. You'll find our podcast that comes out every Tuesday. I do every few weeks. One of the episodes is me just doing a Q&A. So I take some questions I've got from a seminar like this, from my Instagram account, and I put those questions into a podcast episode and give you the answers. Every few weeks, I also interview a guest. So we've had pediatricians talking about reflux. We've had relationship therapists talking about setting boundaries with your in-laws. We have a multitude of topics. It's called Sleep Cues, the Everything Parenting podcast. So you can check that out on the website. It's on Apple and Spotify as well. And like I said, it comes out every Tuesday. You can subscribe to that for free. So loads and loads of resources on our website. Okay, thank you. You're welcome, Mariana. You're welcome, Michaela. And there's some notes taken. Okay, I think that's everyone. We have a couple of minutes left if anyone has additional questions. But otherwise, I can wrap up. And yeah, like I said, if there are questions you still have, questions you think of after this, questions you feel comfortable asking in the chat or in front of the group and you'd like to ask individually, just contact us via the website and we can absolutely answer those or have a chat and get all of that sorted out. So thanks very much, everyone. Also, feel free to follow us on Instagram. I'm on there pretty much every day answering questions, offering advice. I put a question box up on our Instagram page every Monday morning, and then throughout the week, I answer as many questions as I have. So you can throw questions there on our Instagram account at The Happy Sleep Company. I'll put it right here so you can just click on it if it's easier. Sleep Company on IG. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Auggie, for having me on. And I hope to do this again soon. Bye, everyone.